Welcome to today's episode. Today I've picked from the shelf Helix, written by Eric Brown. Eric was a British science fiction writer born in May 1960 in Haworth, Yorkshire, England. If that name sounds familiar, it's because Haworth is the same village where the Bronte sisters once lived and wrote. Growing up in a place so rich in literary history, it seems almost fitting that Brown would go on to leave his own mark on the literary world. But long before that, he began writing at the age of 15 while living in Melbourne, Australia, inspired by authors like Agatha Christie and Robert Silverberg. Over the course of his career, Brown published more than 20 novels. His debut, Meridian Days, appeared in 1992 through Pan Books and was set on a far-off world. From there, he went on to create both standalone stories and larger series, among them the Bengal Station trilogy, Necropath, Xenopath, and Cosmopath, released by Solaris between 2009 and 2010. A recurring thread in his science fiction was humanity's contact with alien civilizations, always told with a strong emphasis on the human experience at the heart of those encounters. But Brown didn't confine himself to science fiction alone. He also explored crime writing with the Langham and Dupre Cozy Crime series, and wrote books for younger readers with Barrington Stoke. His talent as a short story writer was also recognised. He won the British Science Fiction Association Award for Short Fiction twice, in 1999 and again in 2001. Of course, his most successful science fiction novel is Helix, published in 2007. It tells the story of a colossal alien megastructure, a corkscrew-shaped chain of 10,000 planets orbiting a distant sun, and the diverse societies that call those worlds home. Eric was often called a master of space megastructures. I found a very interesting interview Eric gave to G.J. Stevens, and I'd like to share a short fragment with you. Here's how Eric himself described his work. Well, to be honest, a bit of both, really. I detect common themes running through my work. I like to write about the good in people, even if that isn't always apparent in my characters at first glance. I write about redemption and friendship and love, the perfidy of religion and those in power. These things crop up again and again in my books and stories. But at the same time, I try to ring the changes in the form of the stories I tell. I think many of my novels can be seen as individual and unlike anything else I've written. While some of my novels are alike, Helix, Helix Wars, the weird space books, many are very individual in terms of setting and narrative structure. The Kings of Eternity, The Serene Invasion, Guardians of the Phoenix. I don't embark on a book thinking, right, I want this one to be unlike any other I've written. But at the same time, I think many of them are sufficiently different as they're about different types of people in different situations, with varied settings. Writing Life of Eric Brown. Eric wrote using Word on a Dell computer that was more than 12 years old, a gift from fellow writer Keith Brook. It wasn't fancy, but it did the job. He never cared much for a technology. He didn't own a mobile phone or even a watch. As he joked, if he needed to tell the time, he carried a sundial in his backpack. When it came to planning a novel, he kept it simple. He scribbled notes freehand in an old jotter. These days, he admitted, he didn't plan much at all. Just a few ideas about characters, maybe a line of dialogue or two, and then he'd dive straight in. His notebook sat to the left of him while he wrote, filling up with everything from 1950s slang for his crime series to word counts he tracked obsessively. His writing routine was steady. 5 days a week, he'd walk the dog at 8:30, sit down at his desk by 9:15, and write until lunchtime, usually producing a couple of thousand words. After a simple lunch of green tea and one of his famously odd sandwich combinations, he'd return to the desk for another session, adding another 2,000 words before finishing mid-afternoon. In the early days, before marriage, he'd often work evenings and weekends, sometimes producing as many as 6,000 words a day. Walking his dog, Uther, a red and white setter, was as much a part of his process as sitting at the keyboard. Uther was their first dog, a true life changer, and together they spent 2 hours a day roaming the countryside around Cockburn's Path in Berwickshire. Those walks gave Eric time to dream up new ideas, and Uther even found his way into Tony Ballantyne's novel Dream Paris. Eric worked in his study, surrounded by over 3,000 books, with the smell of dog in the air. He was a collector, not just of science fiction, but of biographies, mid-20th century fiction, and the works of writers like Rupert Croft Cook and G.K. Chesterton. He never read on a Kindle. To him, books were objects with history, beauty, and meaning.